everyone. Meg Hayes here from Vicious Cycle Podcast. If you have enjoyed listening to our podcasts every week, if you enjoy our ridiculous period songs, please subscribe to us at Stitcher or iTunes. Head on over to iTunes and rate and review. Also, just tell people and keep calm and tampon.
It may be primal, it may be vital, but it makes you homicidal. It's a vicious, it's a vicious, it's a vicious cycle.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Vicious Cycle, the podcast about periods and the people who get them. I am Kate Elston.
I'm Meg Trowbridge.
And I'm Meg Hayes.
Thanks for joining us. This is episode 17.
Wow.
Crap, which is also my lucky number. This episode is all about PMS and if it's real.
It's not. Just kidding.
We don't know. We don't know.
Thank you for joining us. That's the episode.
Good night. Good night, New York.
But yeah, we'll get into it. But first, let's catch up about everyone's periods. How anything to report?
I'll start. Nothing to report.
Thanks, Meg Trowbridge.
Delightfully peaceful, non-bloody week.
You didn't have a twofer this week?
No, that
This
was
month?
last week. That was last week. So
Okay. I got my period. I tried some products, which we will be talking about in a later episode.
Yeah, anything to like
some of it was
preview?
traumatic. Some of it was delightful.
Okay.
I mean, that's really it. I had a better flow this time than last time. I had
meaning
some
heavier.
heavier, yeah.
I love that. That's better.
I know. Well, last time was like 2 days. I'm like, that doesn't even count.
Yeah.
I bought the most insane things at the grocery store, which I put on our Instagram, which was like pizza, salad, red vines, bubble water, nacho cheese chips, like insane.
It sounded good at the time.
2 different types of bread, like raisin bread, seed bread, like
Just bread.
it made no sense. I looked at my cart and I was like, the fuck, a crazy person bought this stuff.
So, we should do an episode on cravings.
Yeah.
because
It was hard. And
I would love to get into that.
part of me thinks that I just play into it and I'm like, oh, this is my excuse. But I had a strong need for like Fig Newtons to where I like on my lunch break left work and went to go get Fig Newtons. So I mean that's stronger than like your typical craving.
I mean, you guys remember my jalapeno cheddar Cheetos
Right, I thought of
situation? Yeah, so we should do a whole thing on that.
Agreed.
You guys know this because last time we recorded, I was what I thought was moments away from blackorting. Turns out it would be another like 5 days before I got my period. I was a week late. And I was feeling real crappy just that whole week. I think I told you guys, like, broke down at work one day, like several times, just out of frustration. I mean, I believe I was justified in my anger at work, but I just kept crying. Like, people would come over and be like, "Is everything okay?" I'd be like, "No." and then so in that moment, I was like, "Okay, this is probably." My period is like around the corner, but it wouldn't come for another couple days. And so I thought that maybe I was pregnant and I was like very feeling shitty. I was super sad. My cravings were crazy. I wasn't sleeping well. I was really tired. So I was like, okay, this could be one of two things. Yeah. Either period or pregnancy. It was weird. And so, yeah. And then that feeling that we've talked about you feeling like you're bleeding, like the trickle feeling.
Yes.
I felt that. It was like, it's like ghost flow.
Yeah.
Ghost
Yeah.
flow. Also great
Ghost
name for a
flow.
podcast. It's ghost flow.
that could be our menstruation or our menopause episode name.
Ghost flow.
Yeah. Ghost.
Love it. I felt like I had that all week. Like, and so I would keep going to the bathroom and keep checking and be like, okay, it's still not here. What the F?
Yeah.
So it was almost just like, it just took up so much of my mental capacity, like, especially at work, like going to the bathroom and like, and also because I was carrying, in preparation for all the alternatives I want to try, I was carrying around a pouch of like Thinks and a Diva cup and reusable napkins. Like I was carrying them around in preparation. I didn't have any tampons on me because I was like, I'm going to go hard on these alternatives.
Nice. Yep.
So I was carrying it around like for a week at any moment's notice, like gonna bleed. So then when I finally did get it, I was too, like, I don't know what. It had just been too much. So I didn't want to use a Diva cup. I was like, I have already.
The buildup was so intense.
The buildup was so crazy. And I just did not feel like I wanted to like try something new.
Yeah.
So I wore Thinks, which I'll talk about. I really liked them though.
Nice.
Thinks is the underwear that you just put them on and they soak up all the blood. And it's like so thin. I don't know how it does it. It's like truly magic because I was so heavy. All this gush coming out. And Meg Hayes and I, on that day I got it, performed at the Talkies comedy show in Oakland, which was really awesome. And I actually was wearing the Things and we got up on stage and asked everyone which one of us they thought was menstruating.
Did they guess correctly?
I think they were so shocked
50, yeah.
at what we were talking about. They were just like,
Yeah.
This feels like a trap.
But I will say, that at that show, in the backstage for all the comics, there's one bathroom. I guess it's for everyone though. It was for the audience too.
It was.
And I was so heavy, but still not bleeding through the Things. Whatever I had, I kept an eye on it. I had extra underwear with me and then reusable pads as a backup. And at one point, I went to the bathroom, left, came back, and noticed that I had bled on the toilet, like underneath the seat, where guys lift it up, and then there's like that porcelain, and I noticed it there, and I was like, oh god. So not only did people see it, but they know it was me because I had been on stage being like,
it like
I'm
an idiot.
the bloody one. So that was just hilarious.
or you cleaned up someone else's blood.
It could have been someone else, but I think it was mine.
Because I feel like usually that comes, like I make that happen when I pull out my tampon and it goes boink,
Yep.
blunk.
Yeah, no, I think it was mine because I remember I was so heavy. It was crazy. And I have a new smell to report.
Ooh.
Because I think we talked about, while I was on that week, I was like, we've talked about how it could maybe be smellier if it's been in your uterus for a longer time. Yeah. So I was very aware of if I were to bleed, what that smell would be. But also I was wearing Thinks, which I don't think, it wasn't terribly smelly, but it's obviously not like wearing a tampon.
I think for every time you say think, you should just say thanks. Like, I thinks.
Oh, sure.
this segment.
Sure,
Absolutely. Thinks. So I think
so
that's smellier.
I thinks that I have a new scent, and it is as follows. Smoked salmon that has fallen on the ground. In the dirt, maybe. Smoked salmon that has fallen in dirt.
So it's like smoked salmon that you brought to a picnic.
Yeah. A juicy smoked salmon that is off the grill and juicy and delicious that has just fallen in dirt.
So, but it is delicious.
It's delicious.
It's delicious.
Yeah. No, I liked it.
Not a problem
So
with
Kate would just wipe the dirt off and just go for that smoked salmon.
I would blow it.
You guys, I dropped a Reese's Pieces in the theater and it was down there for a solid 20 minutes and I didn't eat it, but I had to talk myself out of eating it.
In a movie theater?
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
No.
Anyway, so that's that smell.
Wow.
That's that story.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Shall we get into our bleed search?
Let's.
All right.
Let's do it.
Meg Trowbridge is going to lead us in this episode about PMS.
PMS, fact or fiction?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I think it's best to start at the beginning.
It's a great place to start.
Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, said that moods and physical disorders in women were caused by hysteria or the wandering uterus.
Oh.
Uterus just moving all around in our bodies, stirring up
physically
shit.
wandering uterus?
Yes.
Okay, wow. Not just like hypothetical, like.
Yeah, he
in
thought
theory-
it moved
okay.
around.
Oh, boy.
So he gets it. And for millennia, hysteria was diagnosed and treated until it received a new name in 1931 by American psychologist Robert Frank, who in my head I've been calling Frank Robert. Robert Frank, who published an article titled "The Hormonal Causes of Premenstrual Tension." And his symptoms are irritability, bloating, fatigue, depression, attacks of pain, and impulse for foolish or ill-considered actions.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
And I'd just like to say, Robert, if I knew that men were lumping bad decision-making under PMS, I would blame so much more stuff on PMS.
I would get away with so much
We could get
more.
away with murder. It'd be like
3
the
months-
Twinkie defense. Like, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
It was-
I was it was PMS.
I wore very bright and very baggy orange pants for like 3 months, almost every other day. That was a 3-month PMS episode, obviously.
I remember those pants. They were comfy.
I
comfy.
I dated a guy who later came out as a Scientologist. It must have been PMS.
It was definitely PMS.
It was prolonged PMS.
These were all ill-considered actions,
Yes.
and we are not accountable for them.
When I was accidentally a redhead for a couple months. PMS.
Your hairdresser was PMSing.
Yeah, obviously.
So then Lady Dr. Katerina Dalton, a British physician in 1953, got into the conversation.
Thank God, finally.
Finally. And she said, because all of these things that the male doctors have been saying were causing women's moods and stuff were all uterus related. They were like, it's all like attributed to you having a uterus. That's like the only thing that it could be.
That's the only explanation.
The only explanation. We have no idea what that is.
It's all the black hole that is the uterus.
So Dr. Dalton said she believed it was dealing with a fluctuation of estrogen and progesterone, and she renamed it premenstrual syndrome. So she's the one who kind of finally named PMS, and she said it was more hormonal. And so that's kind of like become our modern way of thinking about it, because she added symptoms like diarrhea, moodiness, insomnia, food cravings, etc.
I'm inclined to believe the woman doctor.
She seems to get it
as well.
But
yeah.
listen to these symptoms she added.
Oh boy.
Increased sex drive, which I've never experienced, but
Well, PMS, if we're talking premenstrual, that could be when you're ovulating, right? What's the time?
I think it's just the week before you bleed.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, honestly, some people might ovulate.
I feel like
then.
everyone's different.
Yeah, agreed.
When it comes to sex drive.
Yeah. Lack of physical coordination, which I feel like I totally get.
Dude, my friend is
yeah.
convinced that she gets clumsy around her period.
You've said that.
I constantly, I mean, I get bruises that week because I'm just banging into everything.
Yeah,
Wow.
interesting.
And here are my two favorite: increased personal strength. This idea that women are just like hulking out,
So much extra blood flow.
and also feelings of connection to nature or to other women.
Hold my hand. Hold my hand. Look at us. We're holding hands.
Okay.
But I was like, one, I feel like even in the 50s, she must have had some woo-woo friends who were like, I just really love to like free bleed in a meadow with my ladies.
Kinda. Remember when Kinda called our hotline and was like, I want to be one with women on my period?
Yeah.
That was probably Kinda.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kinda.
so I think there's something there. So yeah, so I feel like that was kind of the beginning of how we understand PMS, or what we think PMS is.
But up until then, it was just doctors being like, oh, it's the from Hippocrates to the 1930s.
Yes. It was ladies have uteruses. It makes them crazy.
Is that where the word hysteria comes from? Hysterectomy? I feel like I heard that once.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense. When I think there was a movie that came out called Hysteria that was about prescribing women with like masturbation, right? To deal with their hysteria.
Yeah, Sarah Rule wrote a play about it.
Yeah.
So according to this Guardian article, the etymology of the word hysterical, it's a word with a very female baiting history coming from the Latin hystericus, which is of the womb.
Wow.
So this was a condition thought to be exclusively to women. Yeah, I feel like I'd heard that before.
Yeah.
Because you don't talk about men being hysterical. It's like bossy, like it's a kind of coded language.
Right.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
the removal of the uterus is a hysterectomy.
Right.
Right. So it's like removal of the hysteria.
Hysteria is.
Poof.
Wow.
I mean, pretty ridiculous. So I think now I'd just like to cover and confirm with you two what we think of modern day PMS. So as I understand it, it usually happens the week before you get your period, and you experience bloating, breakouts, tender breast, headaches, weight gain, anxiety, depression, crying, mood swings, fatigue, or some people say like experiencing forgetfulness. And those are all things that like I've always associated with what PMS could be.
Agreed.
And from my vast research, it's still unclear what its cause is, whether it's hormone fluctuations or like serotonin levels changing.
Interesting.
Especially like the mood element of the PMS. And I think like no website feels comfortable being like, it is due to this. I think they're just like, women say they feel these things, and we believe women now.
2 millennia later.
And then things that WebMD and the Mayo Clinic say. Meg knows Mayo
Hey,
Clinic.
Mayo Clinic.
Things that could make these symptoms worse are smoking, drinking booze, eating sugar and red meat. So all the fun things you're not supposed to do before you get your period.
That's what you want to do.
I know. Those are all the things you want.
Yeah.
Not
I don't
red
smoke.
meat?
Yeah.
See, but that meat's high in iron. I
Yeah.
think that'd be good for you.
Maybe it's only good once you're losing iron.
Maybe.
Smart.
At that week, you're holding on to it.
Sure.
Dr. Trowbridge says. And then I was reading a lot about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which just sounds like PMS on steroids, because it's like you experience severe panic attacks, crying spells, and suicidal thoughts.
Whoa.
So like, but
But
apparently,
only when you're the week before,
the
your,
week
period.
before your period.
That's strange.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
yeah. So I read a couple things about people saying like everyone else makes PMS sound like, oh, I'm just cranky, and they're like, I have a super hard time this week.
If that's happening to you, consult a doctor.
Yeah, for sure. And they say that some of the remedies for, so it's called PMDD, are similar to remedies for PMS, like eating things rich in vitamin B or exercise. Sucks. So all this to say, these are our understandings of what PMS is. But is it even a thing?
Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun.
Nailed it.
That's Kate's go-to note. I don't know what note it is, but it's your best friend.
B flat.
Dun, dun, dun.
The way that I harmonize is just say the last note I did.
Yeah.
So it's like dun dun dun.
Happy birthday to you. Oh my God.
So there are a couple articles that are out in the internet.
Well, first of all, do you guys think it's real?
I think I do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just because.
Like, do you feel like you actually like? Can you go? Oh no, I experienced that.
So I think I don't experience it every month, but there are definitely days, because usually when something makes me sad, I know what it is. Like if it's a moving commercial, I know that it was just a well-directed, well-acted commercial with great music. And I'm like, yep, that makes...
And dog acting.
And amazing dog acting. But those are things that like, I don't have to wonder why I cried. I'm like, no, that was just effective.
Right.
But there have been times where like out of nowhere I'll cry, and I'm like confused about it, and Kevin's being really sweet, Kevin, my husband, but I'm still like angry, and then like a day later I get my period, and I'm like, okay, I really feel like I had no control over my emotions that day.
Yeah.
I think between the three of us, you have talked the most about noticing right before your period.
Yeah.
I think because I don't have it, I tend to think it's bullshit, but I don't want to say to women it's a load of crap, like if they find solace in that diagnosis of being like, this is what I'm feeling. But I really, it has been taken and blown to such insane proportion by men that it is just a way to call us witches. It's like modern day like Salem witch trials. Like
Let's get into
so that's kind of my opinion. I don't want to completely disregard it if women find comfort in that, and some women may legitimately have these things.
Yeah.
But I think going forward, I'll start trying to pay attention the week before my period, because I really don't notice much.
Yeah. Cool.
But then again, I have cravings during my period. Yeah. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, like I said, I think I get sad and like irritable, and I just burst out crying at work for real things, for real reasons. But otherwise, I wouldn't be crying.
And that happens before and not during.
Yeah, before.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, a couple articles I want to touch on. The first is one Kate sent my way, which is called "Is PMS Real or a Myth?" And this is a Newsweek. It's by Melissa Matthews. And she focuses on a psychologist, Robinstein DeLuca, who, just a choice quote from her. She says, but if you say it's PMS, it's like a get out of jail free card. It's women's excuse for when they need a break. So she's a psychologist who truly believes that PMS isn't a thing. It's just this crutch that women have been using. And if you hear that quote and go, WTF, like lady, like way to call a bitch out. And she has a TED Talk from 2014 where she kind of expounds on this. But what she's actually trying to say is that PMS is also used mainly as a way to discredit women. And
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, like, oh, a woman couldn't be in charge because they're so moody.
Absolutely.
Blood coming out of her wherever.
Yeah.
Quote from our president.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a popular way to discredit women. But she also says sometimes it's women's scapegoat. Scapegoat.
Oh, like sometimes we can use it as an
Ourselves.
excuse.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's only because we have to defeat the patriarchy somehow.
And sometimes we need a damn break.
Yeah, because people basically call us irrational because we have like an overflow of hormones.
Yeah.
As if men don't have an overflow of testosterone that precludes them from making good decisions.
Exactly. Well, so a brave man named Frank Burris.
Brave man Frank Burris says,
Bold man. He wrote an article, Is PMS Real? For Slate.
wow,
I see
buddy.
what you mean by being brave.
Brave dude.
I would love to be in that writer's room like, oh, really, Frank? Okay.
Frank, you want to take this one
You
on?
want to take this? You're going to take this one, Frank? How does everyone feel about Frank taking this?
Take a poll.
All the women were out on their periods that day.
He's like, is it real?
We need to do this for HR purposes.
Well, so he wrote a somewhat interesting article, and he references that, like, so in the beginning of the article, his wife comes in and says something like, well, now I know why I was being so moody. I got my period today. And then he said something like, are you sure it was because of your period? And then she looked at him like she wanted to
Then she socked
flay
him in
him.
the face.
And he was like, no, it was definitely your period. Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. But so his take is PMS truly like a medical condition or is it a cultural syndrome? And so he kind of did some research on whether there are similarities or differences in what other cultures and countries claim their PMS is. Like a lot of countries don't even like reference it as a thing, or in other countries they don't list the same symptoms as us. Another article that came out in response to this article titled, Of Course PMS is Real. The real question is, why don't we have a cure? And that was written by Emily Crockett and Julia Bellows for Vox.
Vox with a V.
Vox with a V. And they had this great kind of sum up of his research. The research Burris cites is pretty interesting. There seem to be cross-cultural differences in how women report their experiences of PMS. For instance, Chinese women report sensitivity to cold as a PMS symptom, and American women don't. American women report negative emotional symptoms and Chinese women usually don't. One study found that women who endorse traditional gender roles tend to experience more menstrual distress. And another study found that the longer women of ethnic minorities live in the United States, the more likely they are to report PMDD.
Wow.
Dysphoric disorder.
Okay.
And I'm like, that might just be because it probably sucks to be a person of color in this country. But also a bleeder. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting because he had all this, you know, these studies kind of show how different PMS is per country. And so...
But what did they say in response to that?
So they said...
The Vox women.
This research doesn't come anywhere close to concluding, as Burris does, that if PMS is a syndrome, it's almost certainly a cultural one. Obstetrician gynecologist Amy Tutur explained in a blog post in response to Burris, these studies don't demonstrate that PMS is culturally constructed, merely that the way women experience and talk about their symptoms can be culturally mediated.
So maybe they experience these things, they just aren't comfortable talking about them openly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because that's what I was thinking. Like, maybe it is, because we are so comfortable in Western countries talking openly about, or more so than other countries, talking openly about periods. You can say, ugh, I'm PMSing. Oh, and here's why.
Yeah. And then like,
But just because someone isn't vocal about it doesn't mean they're not experiencing it. Just because they don't respond to a survey or research about it doesn't mean they don't experience it.
And the fact that maybe they don't even discuss it with their closest friends,
Right.
doesn't mean it's not happening,
Right.
Um,
And it might be something that, like, honestly, yeah, if I didn't grow up hearing that PMS was real, I might not notice it either. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
totally.
if there was, it's like the way that, like, if you, it's like being kind of like a hypochondriac. Like, you start noticing things, like, you start getting itchy when someone says, oh, there's mosquitoes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so it's
Yes.
like, if you're 13 and you just started your period, oh, watch out for PMS. And then you're like hyper aware of it.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I wouldn't have noticed it had our culture not been like, all the women get PMS.
right. And like so I totally resonate with that where, I don't think I totally understood what PMS was, but I knew to make fun of a girl who was being a bitch.
Yeah,
By
absolutely.
being like,
Oh,
she
that's
must
so
have
true.
PMS, you know? And only later did I start realizing, oh, maybe some of these things that I feel that maybe don't necessarily make me aggressive or like cranky, but they definitely feel unusual for my like baseline.
I wonder too if it could just have to do with an increased anxiety in dealing with your period that you feel the week before.
Right.
Because basically you're
Yeah.
gearing up to have to deal with your period and all the things that come with dealing with your period.
As well as
So it's just
continuing your life.
Like you're saying, like a heightened sense of awareness that it's about
yeah.
to start.
Did that woman who did the TED Talk also talk about just like, because I remember reading her thing and it be her saying there's 100 reasons you could feel bloated.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
like, you know.
And she said there's a bunch of reasons why your hormones might shift that aren't even related to your cycle. So it's, I mean, yeah, it's true. It's like blaming everything on just your menstrual cycle for like why your mental state might be different is probably not always going to be accurate.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I also think there is misconception, I think, when I was younger about thinking PMS was happening on your period. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
it stood for premenstrual. So I think when girls, like, and same with like the Donald Trump thing, like saying to Megyn Kelly that she was an inappropriate questioner at the debate because maybe she was bleeding out of her wherever. That's like I think it maybe in his head it's like, oh, women are bitchy when they're bleeding, but the PMS is supposed to be premenstrual,
Right.
So I think,
Yeah.
you know, but obviously we shouldn't be looking at Donald Trump for any sense of anything.
Any expertise around women or
Anything.
facts.
Also, if people have the idea that we have PMS both the week before and on our period, they're just assuming that half of the month
Yeah.
we're
miserable.
irritable and
Right.
irrational.
And you know that if men got PMS, like there would be like work, you wouldn't have to go to work. It would be like
Yeah.
national holidays.
Of course,
Like,
it would be like
100%.
he's going through a tough time.
Right.
He's bleeding.
Right.
We never get that.
I mean, here's
Right.
a question though. Have you guys ever though, like be honest, have you used the excuse of PMS or bleeding, either one, as a way to get out of something? Like I feel like I've definitely at work pulled the like, I don't feel well, I think I'm on my period to like a male boss, and the male boss just be like, go home.
Like, don't tell me anymore.
Don't tell
Leave.
anymore.
I don't.
But I think that's, I mean, I don't, who like, you know,
Men
everyone
take
needs-
advantage of the
right.
system anytime
We
they
need
can.
we need a break. And I don't, you know, it could have, and maybe it was, I mentally needed a mental health day, and who
Yeah.
knows, whatever.
I certainly used my period to get out of PE stuff. Even when
in
I
high school?
Yeah,
And-
even when
yeah.
I wasn't bleeding, I was just like, I have my period, so I can't do the swim thing. And my coach would always be like, "Of course, take it easy." And I'm like, I used this excuse 2 weeks ago. You dumb
He's not
dumb.
tracking me, clearly.
And I definitely think I may have used it with Kevin a couple times where I'm like, it probably wasn't PMS, but I'm just going to tell him it was
I'm
hormones.
just mad at you.
Yeah. It's like, sorry, I was totally irrational last night. Hormones, you get it.
I can't remember any specific time. I think maybe just to garner like empathy, or
Sure.
maybe to get out of like, oh, I was irrational.
I
and
was
me
crazy
in that
last
moment.
night.
Yeah, I can't think of any specific reason. Or
I mean, I was thinking about this episode today because I was having brunch with my husband, Carl, friend of the acquaintance of the pod.
who, by the way, burst in the last time we
Oh,
were
God.
recording.
Yeah, and we had to cut that out of the episode. He
You-
just waltzes into our apartment like he owns the place.
He rents. He doesn't
He
own that
rents,
apartment.
Anyway,
Oh my
but we
God,
were
that's so funny.
But we were having brunch today, and I think he was cranky because he was hungry. So I dropped him off, went to park. We had rented a car for the day. By the time I come and sit down, he is like his mood has totally changed and he's like really cranky. And I could just tell that like everything I was saying, he was being really negative about. He was like no butting me a lot.
That's an improv term, no bud. It's the
Right.
opposite of yes and.
So I was just like, like this, you're PMSing right now. Like this is like, how come there's no word for men and what they go through?
Yeah.
Like you clearly, I knew he was hungry. And of course, as soon as he got his like burger, he was happy and then we were chatty and it was fine. But I was like, this isn't fair that women have this thing that men can pin on us. And that's why with the caller a couple weeks ago who called in and said, which started this whole episode, is PMS real? It's like, okay, you don't get, it's like the Frank guy who wrote the article.
Right.
It's like, you don't get to decide if it's real or not. Let the women, let the bleeders decide.
Let the coven come together and decide for ourselves.
And then while we're at it, we will identify and diagnose men.
Yes,
Let's come up with
yes.
something right now.
I'd love that.
Carl said, because I said something like, oh, you're moody. And he's like, yeah, I have GMS, guy menstrual syndrome. And I'm like,
Let's workshop that.
We'll workshop it. We'll come up with something better.
Because I was going to say, like, men have outbursts all the time, and they're usually just described as passionate or like, oh, he's just an asshole, but like he's talented. So like, for instance, Jeffrey Tambor, who apparently will just fly off the handle and make people feel really shitty, but he keeps getting work because men are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when you have like a temper tantrum as a man, you should absolutely have people be like, oh, PMS, huh?
We should really come up with a diagnosis right now. Okay, because he came up. What was the thing that
Well, I think what Carl was hangry, which I also get
Yes.
sometimes.
We all get
but there are
hangry.
plenty of times when men are
But
just
let's
moody.
make it for just men.
Moody male syndrome, MMS.
Okay, I like. What about case? Because menstrual has the word men in it, so we could say something
true.
like men shrill
Menstrual
syndrome,
MSS, menstrual syndrome.
Male men's shrill. Oh, it's tough to
We
say.
gotta iron it out
Yeah.
a little.
Male.
menstrual. God, he's being so menstrual.
Yeah,
I will say, I think it's interesting that a man called in about PMS because it would be interesting to hear if any female or trans listener would have thought to call in about PMS. I think for men, it's like this mythical, is this real? Is this not? Is this something that I can comment on?
Is she
is
just
it
mad
not?
at me?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm not, well, whatever. We can be empathetic to men or not. I don't give a shit. But like, I do think it's interesting that a man called in, and I hope that men listen to this episode because it's more complicated than you think it is. And one, you should never be pinning this shit like this on women.
Yeah. On one particular thing. Like, it must just be this. Not that work is stressful or money's tight or she got bad news earlier today. You know, there's
an injustice that she's fucking trying to fight against.
Boom. Boom.
Which is typically like,
Real.
oh, that woman complained about something. She must be PMSing.
Yeah.
Right? It's typically like, that woman stood up for herself in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. She must be about to bleed.
Yeah.
High five, sister.
Yeah.
Menstrual. I mean, what if it's just PMS, pre-menstrual
Syndrome. I mean, I like that.
menstrual.
Mansplain.
Yeah.
Manstrel.
And really lean on the man. Man, he's PMSing. He is being pre-menstrual. All right. Well, listeners, let us know.
Pre-asshole syndrome.
Boom. Listeners, let us know if you like either one of those to diagnose how the non-bleeders in our life also get cranky. And it's fine. Everyone's entitled to being upset.
Right.
But dudes do it too.
Yeah, everyone does it. Hey guys, this is Kate popping in real quick while editing the episode to just say that we recorded this episode before the Supreme Court testimony with Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, and it goes without saying that Brett Kavanaugh, epitome of premenstrual. That's all. I was thinking too, like, I guess I haven't quite appreciated how strange and foreign periods are to people who don't bleed. Like, it must be really weird to like live so close with someone in a way that I think I guess I feel about like anatomy that I don't have. I don't know, like, but it must be kind of weird because the women in your life go through a whole thing every month, and maybe I can understand the like defensive-ness a little bit around it and the confusion and the, I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Also, you never know when it's happening. Like, women are on different cycles, so
Right.
there's no way of knowing. Which
Right.
is why men should never assume, because you
Yeah.
have no fucking idea
Right.
where a woman is. in
Not
her
to
cycle.
excuse the man from 1930 or Frank from Slate.com.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
Yeah.
like, there is this
Know your
fascination.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a fascination that I totally get with men that must
Yeah.
happen. I thought about that while I was stoned the other day. I was like, man, periods must be so foreign to them.
Yeah.
Like, it just struck me. I'm like, periods are weird.
I mean, and I think because I feel like I usually like put up with it, but it's nice now that my husband, like, he totally babies me when he knows I'm on my period. He's like, hey, what do you need? I'm
so
gonna
lucky.
make soup. I know. I'm like, because I think he's seen me have a couple bad like cramps where I'm just like, don't touch, just leave me alone with the heating pad. And I think he just sees that and he's like, oh, I never have to deal with weird stuff like this.
Yeah.
So some dudes are chill about it.
Yeah, that's good.
But also then I totally milk it. I'm like totally taking advantage of the system.
Yeah. If you told Kevin suddenly that you have 2 periods a month, would he like believe you? Just like milk it for all it's worth?
I should just
I'm bleeding
experiment
all
on
the
him.
time.
He doesn't listen to the podcast, so I could do anything.
Cool. Is that all the bleed
Yeah, that
search?
is my bleed search. I wanted
Thanks,
to keep
Meg.
it
Fantastic.
light.
That's so interesting.
It's pretty interesting.
So it sounds like there is stuff to back it up, but it's also blown very out of proportion.
yeah,
I don't know.
think
How would
there-
you summarize what you read?
I would summarize that because the medical world, one, I don't think has put enough research into it to be able to make a call that since we don't know what the cause of PMS is.
That's literally like the cause of tampons. There's like no research.
Yeah.
So there's no way of totally knowing.
Right. So I think because of the lack of research, it is hard to say for sure that it's definitively a thing.
Has there just not been a lot of research on PMS at
Yeah.
all? That's crazy
Yeah.
town.
And so, yeah, so I think, I don't know where to me, it feels like a real thing. And to me, I've always just, the hormonal fluctuation has resonated with me.
Right.
Right.
It definitely
Right.
just feels like something's going on with my body. And when you put synthetic hormones in you have different emotional responses. So I just don't see why it's crazy to think when your body naturally is fluctuating, you'd have a emotional
Absolutely.
response.
Yeah.
So.
But it's okay to milk it too.
Also, totally okay to take advantage.
So listeners, call us in if you have any insight on PMS
Yes.
or menstrual
Yeah.
syndrome.
Premenstrual
Menstrual or
syndrome.
menstrual.
Yeah, if your man seems to be moody, call in. Tell us about it.
Track his cycle.
For Carl, it's whenever he's hungry. Cool.
It's an easy nut to crack.
Thanks, Meg.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
hey, thanks, guys. Thanks. That was fun.
I like that you went way back in time with us.
Hippocrates once said.
Love it.
Should we do a why I cried this week?
Why did I cry this week? Nobody's supposed to be here when I talk about why I cried this way. Friends, lovers, bleeders. Gilmore Girls and A Year in the Life made me sob this week.
What's a year in the life?
A Year in the Life is the Gilmore Girls reboot.
Oh.
It was basically like 4 films for every season of the year. So
Oh,
it started
wow.
with fall. Did it start with fall? Shit. Might have started with winter and ended with fall.
That's how I would do it.
Yes, yes. And I had seen the first episode a really long time ago. So this came out. I'm like, why didn't I get on board with this? It came out in November of 2016, I'm pretty sure. So I think I was beside myself. I think I watched one episode and was like, I need a break from life. But Lauren Graham is such a fantastic actress. And she made me sob. Like cry so hard. Yeah, I was just like, like ugly crying in my kitchen. There was also like her like crying over her dad, and then also kind of like getting everything she wants. And I've watched the
I
show
love that.
for a long time, so
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess I really care about this character. And now that I think about it, was that premenstrual? It might have been.
Now that I think about it. But you could have been
sobbed.
crying for whatever.
Yeah, it was just a
reason.
nice outlet of like, this is so beautiful. everything we wanted. So that's why I cried.
Okay. I cried listening back to our episode where we talked about Homeward Bound. That movie, it never fails. It never fails to make me cry.
Multiple people said they cried during that episode.
Yeah.
My sister sent a picture of her with tears in her
Yep,
eyes
yep,
listening to
yep,
that
yep.
episode.
And it is
get it.
It is relentless. It is constant. It is forever.
It's just it's always the same line for me too, where it's Shadow saying, "Oh, I thought about you all the time."
No, for me, it's more when I watch
Destroys
it.
me.
It's because I think that scene is so iconic to me because I watched it so much when I was younger. It's like that fall foliage in their backyard,
Yeah.
and then it cuts to that like the tree in which they all like emerge from. And so when you see like this beautiful green backyard, and then you see the orange of the golden retriever. Like, I want to get that framed. Like,
Crying right now.
We are going to reference this every fucking episode from now
and the
on.
music, and the music, and the music.
And the music's swell. Jesus Christ.
So that's why I cried.
Oh,
And
my
that's why I will
God.
cry. And it's why I shall cry.
Nice short. I also, listening to the rough cut of that episode, I was laying next to a sleeping husband, and within like 45 seconds, I'm tearing up just because you put the actual movie clip in there. And then I'm laughing because Meg Hayes is like, "You guys are idiots." So I'm like wiping tears as I'm shaking laughing.
I was like, I feel nothing.
Dead inside.
You are dead inside.
But the actual thing I cried about this week, very similar to Meg's, is my regular therapy is just rewatching favorite shows. And so I recently went through Parks and Rec,
Love.
which it's a feel good from beginning to
So
end.
feel good.
So good. And I cry every time she is recognized for her work. So when she's approached to run for city council, when Ben gives her the button that's like, nope, 2012 or whatever it is, when Ben proposes, when she's approached to do, I'm just crying every 3 episodes. And it's a comedy.
There's also a lot of like lady love. Like, what's
Yes.
the female version of?
Galentine's Day.
But I mean, like, what's the female version of like what do they call them? Bromance
Romances?
movies? Like, what is our version of that? Because the Anne and Leslie
There aren't
relationship
many-
is so beautiful.
There aren't many good portrayals of female friendship in pop culture.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there have been a lot lately, but like for so long, women in film were the moms and the girlfriends and the secretaries, and if there were 2 women on film, they were fighting over the lead.
Yeah.
like that's what it
Right.
was for so long. So I think with like Sex and the City,
Right.
Girls, it became more about female friendships.
Yeah. And just like, there are just times when they say to each other, like, I love you, you're worthy, you are a wonderful person. It's like so beautiful, those moments.
Right.
Agreed.
God, I'm going to cry just talking
I know,
about
it's
it.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's a great show.
Great why I cried. Hey, and listeners, let us know if you cried and why, because
Please
we
call
want
in.
to do a
Love to hear why I
compilation.
cried.
We could do a whole episode.
Because you know
Please tell us why
the
you
whole
cried.
Homeward Bound thing started with one listener calling in about she cried at Homeward Bound, and that's what started this whole journey.
And now we're totally changing our podcast to be a Homeward Bound Appreciation Podcast.
we are a strictly Homeward Bound podcast now, and only that scene. We're gonna rewatch that scene every week and talk about it.
Vicious, 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 vicious cycle.
Hey everyone, so I wanted to give an update on a story that we talked about during our tampon episode. I mentioned 2 congresswomen that had bills that they were presenting that had to do with tampons, TSS, and so I heard back from one of them. Her name is Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney of New York. And she and her team were really nice enough to answer some questions that we had about the bill and just about her work in fighting for women's rights, trans rights, menstrual rights in general. Basically, I asked about a bill that she's trying to get through the House. The bill is called the Robin Danielson Feminine Hygiene Product Safety Act. And basically, she said, after hearing some really shocking stories of young women contracting TSS, which is toxic shock syndrome, I tried to get more information about the materials used to make tampons and any health risks, but there just wasn't a lot out there. I remember there was more research at the time about coffee filters than tampons. It became clear we needed more research and that it wasn't going to happen unless we made it happen. She goes on to say, though I had previously introduced the bill, I changed the name in 1998 to honor Robin Danielson, a 44-year-old woman who tragically died after contracting toxic shock syndrome from using a tampon. Her death made it clear how urgent this matter is. Women and girls are still dying of toxic shock syndrome, and in the 21st century, no woman should be dying because of what product she chooses in the pharmacy during her period. It's long past time we conduct through research on the impact and risks of these products. We also asked her what she thinks about just the topic of hygiene products, how her male counterparts feel. And she said, thankfully, over the years, menstruation and menstrual health have become less scary to talk about for people. Young women especially are more confident and less ashamed, and we shouldn't be ashamed. But it is still a difficult topic to get people to discuss, and we still have to combat the sense that menstruation should be something secret or private. There are also a lot of misconceptions out there about how menstruation actually works. I'm glad we're starting to talk about some of these misunderstandings, and as we continue to have a more open discussion about menstruation, everyone is getting more comfortable talking about it. Which is why we're here.
Yes.
We're here to normalize, demystify, bitch about, laugh at periods.
Yeah.
So we were really happy to hear from Congresswoman
So cool
Maloney.
she got back to us. I love that.
So this was in an email.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I basically asked how we could support, and she just said, let your Congress hear from you. Call your people.
That is so bonkers to me that she says that there's more research done on coffee filters than tampons.
That's insane.
That's crazy. Well, thanks for reaching out and following up with her,
No
Meg.
problem.
Yeah.
I was really grateful that they took the time to get back to us.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode on PMS. We learned a lot of good things. We had a lot of good discussions. Next week, we're going to be getting real graphic and talking about the taboo of period sex. Yeah. So, turn out the lights, light some candles.
Put down a towel.
And join us for that episode. I'm so excited. That's it for this week. Have a fantastic week. We love you so much. Thank you for continuing to listen to us.
Love you so much.
We're having so much fun on this journey. And in the meantime, keep calm.
And tampon.
It may be primal, it may be vital, but it makes you homicidal. It's a vicious, it's a vicious, it's a vicious cycle.
Our theme song was performed by The Go Ahead. Check out more at thegoaheadmusic.com.